All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 124 today, DMT and My Occult Mind, part 2, with Dick Kahn. Dick Kahn's been on the show before. Go check out our previous episodes with him. The first episode was a while back. I think it was episode 38. You can check that out. And also, we did a two-parter with him on the difference between ayahuasca versus smoking DMT, so you can check out those episodes as well. Like I mentioned, he's the author of the new book DMT and My Occult Mind Part 2, and he also released a light version of his first run of the book, so check those out. I have the links down below. And welcome back, Dick.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much, Maurice.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
You're welcome.
So, since we've had you on, have you done any more ayahuasca ceremonies? I know the last time we had you on was the first time you had done an ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah. I went back for another, I think it's 2 or 3 day ceremony with Sam and Paul, and we had the benefit of a master shaman from the Amazon, Chana Ikaru, I believe his name is. With his family, and that was a different level. The first ayahuasca experiences were really good, strong, but this one was first night was strong, and the second night was intense, to say the least. It was blew my socks off. Really, really amazing. And I've written those up. The intention is to incorporate those into a future project, but really amazing.
No, I remember you describing your experience, and it was interesting because you had so much experience with smoking it and extracting it on your own and doing that whole thing that it just seemed like having that change of pace or that different point of view using the same compound pretty much. I mean, obviously there's different things that play when you do ayahuasca as opposed to, you got the MAO inhibitor and all that. But so writing this book, did that help you kind of formulate more of like a wider point of view on the topic since, like we mentioned, you had just gotten into ayahuasca, or did that influence you at all?
I think those numerous smoked DMT experiences really gave me a really good insight into the ayahuasca experience. I think the mechanics are still very much the same. I just think it's, in terms of my interpretation, it's less obvious what's happening with ayahuasca. It's becomes after repeated smoking journeys, it became very obvious to me what was occurring. Obviously, I've made my arguments and I stand by them. And with ayahuasca, it was it's slower and it's subtler. That said, as indicated, the last experience I had, it was intense. I was blown away. I mean, we'd incorporated harpe into that, which is the insufflatable tobacco, and that was an eye opener. That was really strong as a cleansing agent, but its psychoactive potency was incredible. But when you've had that blown up your nostrils, there's a lot of sneezing. Your eyes are watering, you're hawking, you're coughing, you're spitting, some people are puking. And I know it sounds awful, but in comparison to what you get following that, and in comparison to with ayahuasca also, putting the purging aside, because I know some people are put off by the purging, that is so secondary. I mean, it really helps with the experience, but the experience, the visuals, the sort of the psychic changes that go on within you, profound. But yeah, really, really intense experience. It really grabbed me and it really put it on me. It was great. I would there's people there, they're doing it like,
all right,
often, and I, because of my lifestyle, married man, responsible job, finances, etc., time, I just can't commit to it like they do. And I don't want to say I'm jealous. No, I just say, you know what, if you can do that, more power to you. Must be awesome. Because I would do it far more frequently if I could. I mean, one of the things that I said during that 2-3 day ceremony was these tents, these establishments, they should be popping up all over the country. This should be widespread. Forget your pubs and your clubs and your bars. This is the future.
Maybe one day.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with all the research. Maybe they'll crack it wide open, and there'll be a reason to fulfill that. But so, when you look at, how many times have you done it now? I mean, you were at 600 the first time we talked to you. I mean, what is it, 800, 900?
No, it's not that far. So since publishing the books, I've been on and off, hit and miss with it. Certainly nothing as frequently as I was doing. But what I have done is I've listened to other people promoting vape device as the way forward. And I was like, nah, nothing beats my old bottle pipe, and my torch flame lighter. I'd become so skillful at using it. But yeah, I asked somebody who I knew about that, and they said, okay, buy this and this and this, and this is how you do it. And yeah, I mean, I invested in this vape device here. It's got DMT in the tank, very clean DMT, I might add, and I'm blown away by it. It is so efficient. And what I mean by that is, I've had maybe a dozen breakthroughs on that, but it's like the tank, the e-juice and the DMT in the tank doesn't appear to have diminished. Whereas had I smoked to break through using my bottle pipe, I would have gone through quite a lot of spice. So its efficiency is unbelievable.
Does it last longer in there? Because I mean, doesn't it become less potent over time? Does that happen within the juice or no?
Well, that's a good question, because when I was using Freebase, I would keep it in my fridge, and I did everything I could to keep it, free of oxygen, free of light. Obviously, it's in the fridge, low temperature, no moisture. But I found accessing it every day or every other day, after 2 or 3 weeks, I could discern a diminishment in potency. Whereas this, I do not detect any diminishment in potency whatsoever. And I've had this now for, a few months, but I don't detect any diminishment in potency. So that's a plus.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to your book now. Got this bad boy right here. Everybody go check. You can't because the green on it. It's my green screen's going to show everybody, so it's going to look like there's a hole.
Take you into space.
It's going to look like there's a hole through the book. But so everybody go check that out. Again, the link's down below. It's definitely, I think you're a lot more clear and concise on things. Not that the first one wasn't great, but I just feel like you really hit it home on this one in terms of painting the picture, if you will. And this one, I believe, I don't know. I like the first one, but I think that the second one really has a lot more good. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. You're better at descriptive detail. I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah, I really sort of overhauled my writing style. Obviously, I got no editor. I'm self-published. I self-market. It's all my own work. And I feel with the first one, a couple of people made comments, and rather than get upset by those, I sort of thought, well, are they accurate comments? And I think the first one was a little bit too wordy. It was very wordy. It was a little bit rambling. I knew there was a really good book in there. So yeah, I overhauled the first book, and the second book, it's a much more direct writing style. I know I can write. My job entails writing for many different sort of audiences at different levels, and people have said, you should write a book. So I know I can write, but I feel in the second book, I got my style. I found my style, and I appreciate what you said. I think it's accurate. It's very direct. It's to the point. There's no waffle in there, and I just say what I want to say, and I say it very directly. So thanks. I appreciate the comment.
Yeah, no, I think, again, the first one, I wouldn't even go as far as what you said. There's nothing negative about it. I just think that you went in more of a roundabout way to get to your point in the first one. This one, as you just mentioned, it's very direct. But so I want to talk about something. Actually, when we just had Dr. Strassman on, we were talking about like the placebo effect and like confirming what you already believed going into it. And something in your you talk about your childhood in the first book, and having those weird out of body experiences or paranormal or whatever you want to call it. Do you think then by getting into DMT that's exactly what happened? Kind of what he mentioned, like it's confirming, not that there's nothing still mystical or metaphysical about it, but only that it's personal, it's tailored to you, it's confirming what you want it to be or believe, or how do you feel about that?
In terms of those childhood experiences?
Yeah, like meaning that when you experienced those at a young age, you had this like preconceived notion or idea of what's going on, and then you confirmed it by using this molecule to help you get back there.
I think absolutely. And quickly, let me say kudos on the Strassman interview. I thought that was a really excellent interview. I really, really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
no, you're welcome. And one thing's nobody's asked, what was your favorite ever DMT experience? And I've often wondered myself, out of all my experiences, which one was my favorite? And I've come to conclude that I think it was those childhood experiences, not so much the out-of-body experiences, but that experience where I woke up convinced it was Christmas morning. It was midsummer and red hot. I woke up convinced it was Christmas morning and opened the curtains, and there's this sunshine-like orb, glorious, at the foot of the garden. And I was just mesmerized, rooted to the spot, couldn't move. And obviously when I did move and went to bring my mum and came back, the thing had gone. And I'd say that was my favorite DMT experience, because I'm absolutely convinced it was, I don't know, something in my brain, something in my mind, a level of DMT that was active and must have drawn the attention of something powerful and occult that decided to convince me it was Christmas morning and show me its glorious self. It was amazing. So that was my favorite. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and we also talked about that too. He wrote The Soul of Prophecy, which a lot of it is about these, prophets from the Old Testament having these DMT downloads of some sort, whether it was externally induced or endogenously induced, whatever it is. Maybe that is the answer for some of these people that have paranormal activity or people seeing UFOs or weird instances. I know you've mentioned that too, how you think that the UFO thing is somehow related to all of this. Maybe not DMT specifically, but maybe the place where you get to when you're on DMT. And I know you were researching that. How's that going?
Yeah, really well, and I do think there's a lot of commonality. I suppose the most general sweeping statement you can make is they're all related in that this is occult nature. When you smoke DMT, you're very much interacting with some aspect of occult nature. If you observe a UFO, you're very much observing something from occult nature. If one lands and its occupants interact with you, I would argue you're very much interacting with occult nature, or rather it's interacting with you. I think there's a real strong commonality between them all. And I'm going back through John Keel's works, which I'd read before, well before I started smoking DMT, but now I've signed up for, is it Audible? I think you mentioned it. Oh man, and I go to bed every night with John Keel's books just, going into my brain. And I think I'm through about 3 or 4 now. And I mean, it's just incredible. I really do think he's on the money. I think he it's an occult interpretation which he adopts. And I think the DMT experience, I think in the fullness of time, it will be shown that an occult interpretation is the most accurate and the most meaningful, because hidden from our senses there are kingdoms, and those kingdoms are occupied by all kinds of amazing denizens, many of which, or some of which I would rather say, are all too willing to interact with the user who smoked a sufficient dose of DMT.
Yeah, the occult explanation is an interesting one. Obviously, we love occult and esoteric stuff on this show. We talk about it a lot, but when you look at like what science does and where science is at, they're not willing to make any sort of leap to get there. So they're at a crawl, and that crawl is, there's never going to be anything really that paradigm shifting based on the scientific method, in my opinion. That being said, when you look at some of these traditions, whether they're ancient or more modern, and just the way people approach them and the way they think about them, there's definitely a philosophical aspect to it, which science is kind of left out of the picture of recent. So I think that just having philosophy with the occult mixed with maybe a little bit of science mixed with, like all these things coming together, I do think that you maybe can paint a little bit more of a detailed picture of these experiences from a first-person point of view, if you will. Meaning that I don't think that there's no way to even quantify. A science, you could tell a scientist, this is the compound I took, this is, the dosage, this is the time of day. You could give them every single variable there is, but they're not going to be able to tell you what the experience is like. And I think that that's what, in the occult and people like you and authors that are experiencing these things, I think that's why it's important to talk about it, because again, you're not going to have your mainstream or dogmatic scientists or anybody talk about that kind of stuff. So
yeah, we need more free thinkers to think outside the box and push this envelope to the next level.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I suppose it's difficult for a reputable scientist, because, they know there's something there, dark matter and dark energy being, the obvious candidates. They know something's there. The math tells them it's there. The experiments tell them it's there, but they just can't say what it is. And obviously, if you're a scientist with a reputation, if you're on social media and you're putting yourself out there too quickly, you probably very quickly alienate your colleagues and maybe your paymasters. So I feel like in that respect, I've got a great license to be as free as I like, because, I may have a science-based vocational degree, but I'm not a hard-nosed scientist. So I feel I've got a great license to be free and imaginative, and I don't feel like I'm upsetting anybody or treading on anybody's toes, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't be bothered anyway.
Yeah, so a license the thrill, if you will.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing though is that you do approach it. I mean, your handle, everybody go check them out on Twitter too, and Instagram is DMT Researcher. That is exactly what you are, and also in the sense that I've talked to people that have smoked it 200 times, and you can barely even talk to them. They're just not there. And I'm not saying that does that to you. There's probably a lot of
that might have been how they were before they got into it.
Yeah, who knows what they were doing before? Who knows what their psyche was like or is like or whatever. But you're really, really sharp, and you're really with it. And you also, from the 600, you actually knew the dosage. You approached it like a scientist in a certain way. You weren't just filling it up and hitting it and then, cool, let's see what happens kind of a thing. You actually kind of had a method to what you were doing. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, no, at the time I didn't realize the importance of having that sort of approach to understand the causal nature of the experience after smoking DMT, but it was sincere and it was authentic. And I didn't appreciate the significance of having that sort of from the heart. But yeah, I think it's sort of flavored the written works that I've produced, and I don't want to say I'm proud of that, but I think I'm pleased that I was genuine and authentic with that approach. I think it really comes through in the writing. And I mean, since with what's going on with lockdown, I've had to work from home. I find I've got a lot more time. Obviously, I'm a family man. I've got to invest time in that. But I am just going through books. I mean, I'm going to bed with John Keel in my ears on Audible. In my spare time when I'm not with my family, I am going through books and books. And I think, around DMT, around the occult, around UFOs, I think one of the things that it's made me realize is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's like I'm going back to my roots. I'm from the north of England. I'm a Yorkshireman, and they kind of have this strange sort of, people view it strangely, it can be a little bit thick, a little bit stupid, but equally can be, are known for being very honest and very authentic, and will call a spade a spade. And I think, having read other people's works and then sort of contrasted it to my own, I do feel drawn back to my roots as a Yorkshireman, where, I am very plain speaking about what I'm stating in my works. It is very clear, and I am calling a spade a spade. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because I've always kind of like shied away from my roots, being a Yorkshireman. When I was 17, I left Yorkshire as quickly as I could, because I wanted to see the world. I wanted to move around. But now, I feel drawn back, and I feel quite proud that I'm plain speaking and I am calling a spade a spade. I think I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah, actually, I just want to clarify my last point. I wasn't saying that these substances do anything negative to anybody, but I think what I'm trying to say is that you're very level-headed from doing it so many times. You think that being that serious of a psychonaut, sometimes people go deep, maybe a little bit too deep, and they start to believe things and think things that are maybe just a little bit out of the purview of what's going on. But you've kept it very, you're not saying you for sure know what it is, but you're saying that this is what you think based on your tons of experience with it. And I think that that's what resonates with people that read your work. I think is just you're an explorer. You're an explorer of the mind is how I would categorize you.
Well, thank you. I mean, one of the things I picked up from reading esoteric and occult works is the importance of staying grounded, and I think I incorporated that into my DMT research. So, smoking DMT, experiencing the breakthrough, writing it up, giving it some analyses, I found that very therapeutic. It helped me to integrate, but equally I would make sure that I spent time doing other things, more grounded things, spending time with my family, riding BMX. I love riding BMX, and just sort of, having something other than DMT as a sort of investigative hobby, shall we call it. So I thought that was really important.
Absolutely. I think balance is the key to everything. I think you can't, I mean, even in the past when I've known like, I've been smoking way too much cannabis, or I've took too many I had to stop dabbing a lot. I mean, this has been years since I was doing it, but I was dabbing so often. I'm like, I can't keep up. This is just insane. This is this potent, this much. I can't do it anymore. So
listen, let me tell you, Mike and Maurice, I got a little story there, because somebody very graciously sent me some potent weed. And now with weed, I'd been smoking pot and weed for 20 years, and I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit of a problem for me back in the day. It was more often than not, it was daily basis, and I'd gone 10 years without smoking any weed, and then somebody graciously sent me some very potent weed, and I kind of had it for a few weeks. I was like, okay, let's just try vaping some weed.
Oh, be careful.
And, oh man, listen, because when I was not smoking it before. I was abusing it, and I didn't consider it to be psychedelic at all back in the day. I was getting high or getting monged, shall we? Some of these strains of skunk were just
Right.
blitz mind. But yeah, this is like a couple of weeks ago maybe. I vaped some weed, and I gotta be honest, that stuff is psychedelic AF. It is so psychedelic, and it was a real eye opener for me. And I've tried it a couple of times since, and I've kind of put it in a drawer. And I like, okay,
Yeah.
because but yeah, I mean, when people used to say, "Oh, weed's psychedelic," I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But fair play, that stuff is genuinely psychedelic. In that it's mind manifesting. You can feel that mind manifesting aspect of it, and I don't know, it's like DMT uber light, but there were certainly some visions there that were surprising to me. So yeah, that's just a little story.
I think you really get the effect if you give your brain to kind of get rid of some of that THC that builds up in there, because I'm a habitual user myself. And, if you give yourself a good month, really clean that brain out, you can get the full effects from it. But I wanted to piggyback on that and say, if you have edibles, I've had some of the most intense experiences off the edibles. They were so crazy I had to stop taking them because it was just too much.
Yeah, I can imagine that is really, really potent. So yeah, I've got quite a bit left in my drawer. So maybe sometime.
A little goes a long way with the new stuff.
I can imagine. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's once you come back to it after a while, Maurice is right. It's a whole different ball game. We got a question from a listener right now. They want to know, do you think that there's a connection or possibly a link between, the DMT realm or DMT and astral projection or astral travel?
It's a good question. So when I smoke DMT, I this is based on my own experiences. I've not found that I'm exiting my body in a classic OBE state and free roaming the spiritual realms. That's not been my experience. My experience is that smoking DMT, something from another dimension or something that was hitherto unseen, manifests in my immediate setting and really imposes upon me mesmerically, powerfully, imposing visions, maybe some psychic manipulation in a playful or very occasionally a dark manner, maybe some invasive aspect to it. And I don't know. I don't know if I don't think those beings are astral beings. They seem to have too much of a complete working knowledge of human psyche and human physiology. So I think they're probably from a divine or a semi-divine realm. I don't think it enables me to free roam the astral realm. I don't think those entities are astral entities, but for sure, if they're coming from a divine or semi-divine realm, then they're going to have to come down through the astral dimension before they interact with me. It's a good question. I'm not sure I've done it justice with my answer. But
they have a follow-up question. They're saying that the vibrational onset is very similar, and I know we've talked about that, the vibration or that high pitch frequency that in the beginning of the onset. So maybe there is possibly some sort of connection there.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, when I smoke DMT, one of the very first things you perceive is that high pitched tone or ringing sound in the midst of your head, in the pineal region of your head. And I mean, what I describe here is taking place within seconds after, inhaling the first hit. By the time you get to the third hit, that sound is intense. But I found that with repeated use, I could sense when the entity sort of arrived in my location, in my locale, and then it imposes its own energy, which again is perceptible and audible, and it just goes way past the sort of intensity frequency of that which I'm giving out, it's just off the scale. And I think I said in my my second book, I can never ever get used to those phenomenal energies. You know, I mean, the last time I smoked with my vape device, you know, it was a few weeks ago, and I was in the house, sat on the sofa, I said, let's do it. So it was like three big meter hits, and I could sense after the second inhalation, the entity had arrived and waited for me to complete my third hit, and then it just imposed this power over just a few seconds, and it was so intense. I just wanted to run, and I'm glad I didn't, because it would make going back to future experiments really difficult. But yeah, I mean, it just imposed this power. I was so scared, and then bang, it's like you're somewhere else. You're in this alien environment, and it's showing you all kinds of wonderful things. It was manipulating my psyche, taking me through a range of emotions. I mean, really quick, like laughter was coming from me that I don't think I've ever heard anybody laugh like that. It was like bizarre. It was like some laughter from the furthest reaches of human psyche, and it was just crazy. I mean, I have often thought I should try and like film myself, you know. I should do that.
I'm curious if you're actually laughing or if you're just thinking you're laughing.
Oh no, I'm definitely laughing. I mean, you know, it's really squeezing these emotions, these outpourings from my psyche, and I mean, doing it so quickly. And I don't know if other people have experienced this, but it seems to be a sort of thematic experience that I've had many times now. And I mean, you know, the visuals were incredible. You know, the being one aspect of the visuals, I could never really understand what it was showing me. And then on the last experience with the vape device, would you believe it was showing me like spermatozoa, you know, the little tadpole like male sperm, and it was showing me those, but it's in such a way that you sort of relate to the wonder of your existence, of nature, of that aspect of your being. And the fact that I grasped what it was showing me, I could understand what it was showing me. I took my shirt off, and I'm like, you know, like a football player, and I'm waving my shirt, going, yeah.
Hey.
And then it's like, oh man, I sense the entity still there, and I'm acting like a human idiot, and you can feel the sort of robes of this psycho-spiritual entity slowly going over me. You can see its cellular composition. I mean, thousands and thousands of little cells, but you can feel it just slowly going over me. And I felt so bad for acting like an idiot, but we are but human.
Exactly.
100%. So I guess my question now would be, well, actually, I'll ask this first. Do you know what the highest dose you've ever taken is? And do you think that maybe ramping up to it is a better option, or do you think just blasting off with the highest dose is a better?
So I think there's a couple of things to say here. I think my highest dose was, 99 milligram was my highest dose, but I'm going to rule that out because the crystals were not as potent as they should be. But 83 milligrams with potent crystals, that's my highest. But the second thing I want to say is all that research that's within my books was undertaken over 3 years when I had no social media presence whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then when I published the first book, and I come to realize that I need a social media presence to market the book, one of the first things I see on Facebook was some guy, and I'm friends with him, and he's like, oh yeah, I smoked 150 milligrams, and I'm like, what? I was like, damn. And I had no idea people taking it so far. So it's like now, you know, I really want to produce a third book, but I feel, you know, just so I've left no stone unturned, it's got to be a book that I feel I've sort of pushed myself as far as I can. So yeah, I don't want a follow-up, a third publication that's on 25 milligrams or 40 milligrams. I want to push myself, and I believe I can do that. So let's see.
Yeah, there's somebody that commented on the video. They were getting kind of nasty. The first one we did, where he's like, "Oh, that's nothing. I've done blah blah blah." So there are, see, but the thing that
No.
kills me about that kind of attitude too is like whether
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
on
that's
social media or whatever,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be like, well, you're not supposed to be, but I would think that you'd become somewhat enlightened by using these tools
You
or
know,
these substances, and
yeah,
these people are just bigger
I
assholes
know.
afterwards than they are before. So
Oh man,
yeah,
yeah, like it makes me laugh. I mean, look, people have posted, oh, Dick Khan 600
hmm
experiments, and it's very nice that they've posted that. And then there'll be something like, hey, them's rookie numbers, hey, that. And I think, it's like, it would be far better if we had a chance like, what have you learned? What's your opinion? What have
right.
you found? And I have to say I'm quite suspicious about people who have that kind of attitude. I'm not disputing that they've done way more than 600, but I'm wondering about the potency of the crystals, because on social media I see some people with like a massive jar of DMT crystals, and I think, damn, that's going to oxidize so quickly.
hmm
That's if you're using that after a year or two, it's not going to be as potent as it should be. And I think
right.
when DMT is fresh, you smell it. It's got that sort of mothbally synthetic smell. But if you leave those out over a few days and a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, that smell, that potency is going to diminish significantly, and I think that's indicative of a lack of potency. So, anybody who's saying 600 is rookie numbers, that's fair enough. But is that the best conversation we can have?
Do you know? Is there science on that, by the way? Whether they know if the crystals degrade over time? Is that something that's known, or have you not looked into that?
I don't know of any paper, but I think it's well known
But
that
your
DMT.
personal experience, that's
Yeah,
what. Yeah.
no, I mean it's well known that DMT crystals are sensitive to heat, light, moisture, and oxygen. So
hmm
as I say, I did everything I could to overcome those by keeping it pressed
Right.
in a fridge, obviously dry conditions. But I found with accessing it every day or every other day, that exposure to oxygen, I could discern there was a diminishment in potency.
And I believe you've mentioned you do mimosa hostilis, correct?
Yeah, that's all I've ever
So
had
my
access to.
I want to piggyback back off that real quick though. So have you ever tried extracting with acacia? Because acacia is what all the occult symbolism from ancient times and some of these secret or occult society or groups or whatever. Even there's acacia symbolism, in Masonic culture as well. I mean, we've had PD Newman on here talking about that. But do you think that there could be some sort of like archetypal shift between what you use? Because maybe Mimosa Hostilis is more like one way, and then you try extracting with it, or do you think it is just the same since it's the same molecule?
Good question.
Or
So
since you
from what
haven't, I guess my question was, have you done or extracted from acacia, or have you not done that yet?
No, never had access. I was speaking to somebody overseas and we were going to do a bit of a trade, but it fell through. But if I pulled my finger out, I'm sure I could secure some
hmm
acacia. But I've just always gone with what's available, and what's been available has always been mimosa. But no, it would be good to contrast the difference. I think from what I understand from other users, I think acacia gives a more yellower, orange, or red waxy product, and I believe some people like that. I think they say it's more playful. It's a little bit longer lived, whereas a DMT from a mimosa, it's very quick. I think it's considered more powerful, or just a tad more powerful. So I can't contrast, so I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like I
Right.
say, those energies that it unleashes from oneself, and those energies, that the entity will impose upon you, I'm sure if there's any difference, it's negligible.
Yeah, because I'm fascinated by like the archetypes, and not even saying that it's for sure an archetype, but just that's how I'm categorizing these different experiences, because I'm sure you've seen the videos of the jaguars chewing on the bark and rolling around like it's some like next level catnip or something. And then people see jaguars on ayahuasca, people see rainbow serpents. There's all these archetypes, but then you look at maybe there's this different culture, this other occult, whether it was maybe involved. There's some speculation. I know some people argue that soma's cannabis. Some argue that it's mushrooms. It could be acacia or DMT as well. But you look at like the occult themes within that region over there, whether it be, the Middle East or that region, it just seems like it would be more up your alley, or at least worth a shot. Maybe those entities, I don't know, I'm just saying maybe those entities are a little bit different or more aligned with what you're into or believe.
I think it would be great to incorporate that into any third book that I do manage to publish. So, yeah, I'll keep my eyes out for some acacia.
Yeah, let us know if you meet Osiris over there.
Yeah. Just to quickly give RN Vuta a shout out.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm in touch with RN Vuta and PD Newman, and they've both got books in the works, and I've had the benefit of having I've been privy to insight into what's in them both, and from both authors, PD Newman and RN Vu, I'm absolutely blown away what those guys are going to publish. I'm not going to say anymore, they wouldn't forgive me, but wow, I'm blown away by what they both have in the works.
Yeah, I know. I spoke to Aaron a little bit on DMs, and he was saying some similar things, so I'm excited to see what he comes out with, and we'll get him back on here when he does, and we'll get down to
both friends of the show.
Yeah, we'll get down to it. But I mean, this whole community's awesome. I mean, I've never had any beef or negative words with really anybody, which is good. I mean, because I watch everybody else on Twitter and all other communities fight and get at each other and stuff.
That's not good.
They always attack us because we've never taken it before, but we've made it clear numerous times that we were just out there for the information, and that's why we're getting guests on that have partake, because we've never done it ourselves. We're not opposed to it. It's just never kind of landed in our laps. So
yeah, I think there's lots of different authors and researchers coming at this mystery from different angles. I've looked at Gallimard's work, really enjoyed his book, especially chapter 9. I really enjoyed chapter 9. He's coming at it from a very different angle. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't buy into it. I think he's coming at it from a different angle. I think his research is valid. I read DMT Dialogues, really. I got to say, I really enjoyed Graham Hancock's chapter. I really enjoyed Rick Strassman's chapter. I thought that was great. And I'm going to say, I thought David Luke's summing up at the end of the book, he's so eloquent and articulate. That was a real sort of joy to read. But yeah,
no, it's a good one. I think I read that like a year ago, I believe. But there's some interesting stuff in there. What about mixtures between like cross combinations? Have you what have you experimented with in like combinations? So, like, obviously you've done DMT. Have you taken maybe psilocybin before, MDMA before, LSD before? Like, what have you done?
Yeah. So first one that springs to mind is maybe last year I got some really nice 2CB, and I've mentioned this before, and some people who are just focused on plant medicines, they kind of like poo-poo these synthetic drugs, but I got this 2CB, and it's absolutely magical. Obviously, it's one of Alexander Shulgin's magical half a dozen, one of his top 6, and it's just such a beautiful substance. And I was out, and it was night, and I was just feeling beyond blissful, writhing around on my boy's trampoline, on my own. I think, get the idea into my head, should I smoke DMT? And it always happens when I get that idea. It's like, try and put it out of my mind, and it just builds, like, yeah, go on, you're gonna have to. So I was like, get this pipe and smoke it, and within just seconds something's on me, and it's just really beautiful experience. And there was probably the better story is, I think it was a couple of years ago, and I'd got some MDMA, some ecstasy, and it was New Year, and I take some and enough to sort of be okay around my family, and then family go to bed sometime after midnight, and I take some more, so I'm properly rolling, jaws going, the eyes are going, and then I guess I binged on DMT. It was with the pipe. I got several pipes already, and I was just smoking, and oh my God, it's like being flirtatious with the entity, and it was like, oh man, it was like
sound like Tori Spelling from Scary Movie.
Yeah, all in strange, just like acting kind of camp, and like, and in the end, it went until about, I don't know, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And in the end, I was like smoking, and nothing was interacting with me. And I think, by that time, I was becoming a bit of a wreck, and I thought, they know when I should call it a day. So let me not hit this pipe too hard and then regret it because I get a bit of a slap. So and I've got other things lined up for my research. I've got some 4-ACO DMT, which I believe is synthetic psilocybin. I've got my little medicine box. I've got, again, some people may scoff, but I still not tried 5-MeO DMT. But
I was going to ask you that because you
still I do feel quite abashed that I've not tried it, because obviously it's popular in certain psychedelic circles, but I have some synthetic, I have some genuine toad medicine, and it's just there waiting for me when I find the wherewithal and metal to say, right, let's do it. And I'm sure I will.
I think it'll be an interesting one for you to bounce off of what you already know too, because there's some people that say it's more of like a white light near death kind of experience, as opposed to more of the geometric blast off with the entities and stuff like that. I hear it's more like ego dissolving death, that whole thing. So it'll be interesting to see once you do it, to see how it compares, to the many other times that you've done. And then what about, have you ever done like any real macro doses of LSD or any real macro doses of psilocybin? Have you ever gone to the deep end with those and then compared how maybe that compares to the DMT realm?
So not with LSD. I mean, I was taking LSD when I was like 18, and we were taking it, reasonably frequently, but sometimes I take a couple of tabs, and I've had some, genuinely strong acid that's like, wow, okay, didn't expect that. That was different to last week. But no, I'm probably of an age now, or rather, I'm in a situation with my family where it will be sort of difficult to go large, and have family come back from work or school, so I don't know. But my first experience with magic mushrooms, I had a can, I got commandeered, and this is in the first book. I got commandeered by some bigger boys who I knew better than to argue with, and they said, right, we're going magic mushroom picking. And I think my first experience with psychedelics was 100 magic mushrooms fresh, and I'd sort of taken a cup of tea with 40, and then nothing happened. 20 raw, waited, nothing happened, and then a cup of tea with another 14, and then my psychedelic virginity was duly ravished. I mean, that was really, hallucinations, and real magic time, really good.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I mean, I've done since I was in high school, probably, give or take a couple hundred times with psilocybin, and the most was probably 10 dried, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 dried.
Okay.
And then I've done 7 a few times. But the 10 dried is intense. That's why I was asking you. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but psilocin is, as you mentioned, the extractions, one molecule away from DMT pretty much. So I was just curious if by going deep you were able to find some sort of commonality after it's broken down in your gut and everything.
I did 5 grams. It was a good while ago, and I was in the house, and my boys were younger, and that was incredible. It was the first. I'd sort of, rather than do it in a cup of tea, I did it in sort of like a citric juice, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
And the onset was so quick, and that was such a good night. I mean, it's just brilliant,
Yeah,
just really, really good.
my favorite way to do it is to masticate it until it like evaporates in your
Okay,
jaw, and you, like you mentioned, take little sips of lemon or orange juice,
yeah.
or I've even in these times I've taken some emergency, so
Uh-huh.
that's the way to do it. Protect your immune system while also
Yeah.
getting weird. um what is what would you say is like the most groundbreaking or the biggest breakthrough you've ever had? Is there one scenario or one time that really stands out from the others? And if so, was it communication with the entities or what was going on?
I think the one that springs to mind is, and I feel like I was almost, I think I've just been set up for this experience, is where they operate, they're active, the entity is active invasively within you. And the reason I say I was set up for that is, I'd had some breakthrough experiences just through the door to my right in the little landing area at the top of the stairs. And, it's a breakthrough. You see these human-like entities. It looks like they're wearing masks, and it's magical. But it's like I'd done that, and then I had the same experience. It's like, okay, that was the same as yesterday. I was surprised at that, and then again, same experience. Like, man, and I was so naive at the time. I was like, maybe I've got to the limits of what DMT can show me, which I'm really, people must be laughing now, and they're right to laugh, because it was a stupid thing to think, okay, that's 3 experiences the same, I've got to the limits of DMT, which I was nowhere near. So I smoked it again, and, these entities appear. It looks like I'm somewhere else, and they're like beseeching me to be still and silent, and one's looking like he's gonna dive into me. And I kind of like, I clear my throat, like and they all like this frequency, which is getting really high, it stops, it diminishes, and they're all like going, whoa, like, stay quiet and stay still. And this frequency just builds up, and it just becomes, it's just sanity defying. It's just excruciating. And this entity, literally, this human-like entity, dives into me. And then my voice was modulated to such a strange and bizarre extent. And I shout out, hey, you can't do that. And my voice sounds so peculiar to my ears, and I feel obliged to shout out again. And it's clear that something's within me, and it's somehow manipulating, I don't know, my voice, my psyche, making me feel obliged to shout out. And it was so strange, and then it's like felt like my collarbones were being jiggled about, like uncoupled and jiggled about. I mean, really felt really, when I say physical, not in a painful way at all, but it was like, wow, how can you do that? It's like your stomach's being opened up. And after that, I burst into tears, because, I mean, I choose my words carefully, and it is invasive. And I know there's other researchers, other users that have experienced this, and it's very different to the visionary experiences. It is... It's like something's inside you, and it's doing things that you just can't believe, and it's just amazing. And I cried and cried to an extent. You kind of feel violated, even though the experience was amazing. And I went downstairs, and my wife had heard me shouting and screaming and crying out, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I burst into tears again. And I think there's some justification in saying I was being set up for that experience, because after that, the experiences that followed when I smoked it again, they became invasive. The invasive experiences then became the theme. And I'll tell you now, if those invasive experiences had been among my first experiences, I would have never gone back to smoking DMT. I mean, when you feel them inside, you feel the entity the psycho-spiritual entity inside your brain, and it's doing something in your brain. I think I've got one experiment called chiseling away quietly, and that's just what it felt like. It felt like it was chiseling away at some aspect of my brain. And I mentioned this to somebody, and they said, oh yeah, it's realigning your neural pathways. I was like, wow, that sounds perfect, and I think there's something in that, because I have changed as an individual. I think I've said before, before this, I was a masturbator. I was a wanker. I was an habitual wanker. And whilst I was drinking alcohol, it was not a problem, but I was probably starting to drink a little bit more often than was healthy. And then when I committed to DMT, I said, look, I'm gonna stop the masturbating. I'm gonna stop the drinking. And to this day, that holds good. And I do feel that my emotional intelligence has increased hugely to what it was prior to my experiencing DMT. That's my story anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's true to a certain extent. I mean, I've talked about my OCD and using macro doses of psilocybin to help untangle the ball of anxiety and depression in my brain. So, I mean, and they've proved it with science now. I mean, that's what they're doing with all these studies, that it creates neuroplasticity in some parts and new neural connections. I know they've dabbled with LSD in people with Parkinson's and stuff like that. So, but what you described, I mean, have you ever looked into the work of John Mack with like a UFO and alien abductions and that kind of stuff? Because some of those things, I mean, it is kind of reminiscent of what you described, or possibly like the shamanic experience in a certain way. We're being torn into pieces and taken to the underworld and put back together. But what you've described is a little bit different. It's more in lines of what I would consider like an abduction experience, if you will. People wake up and they're being worked on or tinkered with or something along that lines. So have you looked into that?
Yeah, I was a big fan of John Mack's work. It's many years since I've looked at it, and obviously it was taken from us far too soon, and I think he lost his life in this country. It was a real shame. I think what I would say is, from smoking DMT, I found that there are some of the entities have a distinct commonality, but even amongst those that are common, there seems to be some that are far more powerful than others. And examples I can give are, I've smoked DMT and I've been on a breakthrough dose in the bedroom, and then there's some noise outside. Somebody may bang a car door and the entity flees. It's like in fright, it's startled, and I can sort of see it, and I can actually feel it as it disengages from my own amplified psycho-spiritual constitution. I can tell you which direction it's gone. But then there's others where I've kind of smoked it and there has been noise, and that entity's just not bothered. It's just really put it on me. There seems to be a range of strengths and powers where some are far stronger than others, and I think that probably carries on in occult nature. I think some of these, let's say, entities that impose abduction experiences on people, I think they're incredibly powerful. I spoke to one girl, and she'd smoked DMT for the first time at a remote cottage in Scotland, and she was with I think it was a boyfriend, and he was quite experienced with it, and she hit the pipe hard, and there were grey aliens there, and I think they took something from her, which she could see it was her memories, and they more or less said to her, you volunteer the essence of your heart, and we will give you whatever you want in this life. And she didn't. She also says before that, her boyfriend tried to get up off the sofa, and these entities, these greys, just pushed him down and said in no uncertain terms, "Don't you move." And again, if I'd experienced something like that, even with all my experience, I probably never go back to smoking DMT again. I mean, I think there are some fiendishly powerful entities out there that will choose to interact with, individuals, whether it's in remote areas of America, like I'm learning from John Keel. And I don't know why they do it. I suspect they do it to change culture. I think it's like Jacques Vallée said, they're almost acting as a spiritual control system. I mean, you look around at how influenced with aliens sort of culture is, from cartoons to adverts on TV. It's astonishing. And yet, can anybody produce a UFO? No. It's I think it's all part of a occult nature, and I think at some level with DMT you're interacting with a certain level of entity, but I think above and beyond that there's some real powerful beings that are either for weal or woe along their own agenda, shaping culture and trying to impose their own agenda on humanity, for better or for worse. It's a real, I'm not saying it's all good. I've had 2 or 3 really scary experiences where, something's interacted with me, and I've had 2 or 3 hours after that sort of fretting for my mental health.
Wow.
But that's 2 or 3. I don't want to put anybody off. That's 2 or 3. I mean, by and large, the majority, beyond playful. I've laughed like I just can't tell you. Laughed. I'm in my late 40s. And the last time I smoked with this and took my shirt off and I'm waving it around, the next thing I did was lean back in the sofa and my legs are kicking in the air like a gleeful little child. It's just, what's not to like?
But you make a good point, though, which is, and that's why a lot of people think that the UFO phenomena is non-material, or they're ultra-terrestrials, or whatever the case may be, because they're sightings. And I've mentioned it on this podcast many times with the whole UFO thing, why there's no good evidence via cameras or recorders or anything like that. I personally think that because it's consciousness related of some sort. So you need your brain to process whatever that is. You need all of your senses working together as a human being to see whatever that thing is. And I don't know what it is or what it wants, or if it's living, or if it's some sort of, von Neumann probe, or, who knows what it is. But I'm just saying, you make a good point that nobody can produce, that we know of, physical. There's these metamaterial things that they keep studying, and obviously
we got those radars that
we keep an eye on all that stuff.
We
but
don't know what that is.
It's just and you've got the sightings, which you've got the 3 videos that To the Stars Academy released or put out there, and then the New York Times articles and all that stuff. And you've got David Fravor going on Joe Rogan, and he's a top pilot that has no reason to make something like that up. So there is all this evidence, but there's not this one thing that we can put our hand on and say that's it. It's always beyond the grasp just a little bit. So
it's fascinating. I think, as I was saying, some of these entities are so powerful, and I think whilst ultimately it is mind, these entities can, they seem to operate on a spectrum of tangibility and can make themselves as physical as the physical things that we're accustomed to. But I don't think that's their permanent state. I just think they have that power and that capacity to, if we want to make ourselves into a hard shelled UFO, no problem.
Right.
But I don't think that's its permanent state.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that I've never seen anything weird like that. I've gone camping many times. I've been out in the wilderness. I've seen weird stuff up in the sky, but nothing that was like, that's a physical,
And it's worth saying at this juncture that, in my second book, there's a few experiments in there where I've smoked in the garden, and, black orb UFO will appear, or, smoked, and it just overwhelmed me, and I was just laughing with hilarity. It was just it completely took me by surprise, the potency of the DMT, and after I slowly came down from this hilarious outpouring, which I know my family could hear, these three, I don't know, like creamy white, black objects all kind of skipped along about 50, 60 foot ahead of me. And it's almost like, it's like they appreciated what I'd experienced. They were like saying, yeah. And, I've seen earthlights, or what UFOologists will call earthlights. And I think, on Twitter, I've tried to get some UFO accounts interested in DMT, but there's clearly a couple of individuals who, they've initiated themselves into what DMT is and what it does. But I think a lot of them are still pursuing this disclosure agenda or this nuts and bolts agenda. And
I mean, I have no problem with that either, because I think that
no problem with it, but
that's a possibility to me. And first of all of it's a possibility, and none of it is. I mean, there's days where I don't believe in anything, but then there's days where I believe in a lot more than most people. So it depends on my mood. It depends on what I'm studying. It depends on what I'm researching. It depends on the inner battle of my mind and philosophy of what I'm looking at, and it depends on a lot of things. But you make some good points there, and I do think, though, actually there are people that are making the crossover. I mean, obviously your work, and I've seen you tweet about UFOs and stuff, and Dr. Andrew Gallimore's book, Alien Information Theory, this idea that you could communicate, and that's what these entities are, or possibly when you go deeper, maybe some sort of quantum entanglement kind of a thing happening. So there are people that are making some of these, they're bridging the gaps with some of these topics, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what all this research yields. And once they do that extended trip DMT experiment, I guess we'll see if there's any sort of updates.
Hoping they sign you up for that, Mike.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm
first
down.
in line.
I'm down. Because I think that it would be, for me, having to done what I've done with psilocybin and the CBT and the OCD and everything. I think that it would be interesting to see what kind of lasting effects or positive effects, or whatever effects in general. I mean, I think that I've gone deep enough with other psychedelics that I think that I'd be comfortable with that. But I don't know how they do that, though. I don't know how they find I know in the spirit molecule they mentioned that they put something in the newspaper when they were doing the trials for that, and people were responding and stuff. So I don't know how that works now, but would you be interested in something like that? Obviously, because you would be a good test subject because you've done it so much that.
No, I have thought about it, and if they gave me a choice and said, okay, you can do extended state DMT, or we can put you in the next sort of rocket to the moon and back, I would take the next rocket to the moon and back, but only because I think it would be much less scary. So I wouldn't want to say yes, and I wouldn't want to say no to extended state DMT. I know it's a lot of people like, oh yeah, I'll do that, but yeah, I think that would take some. I don't know. I'd be intrigued. I really would be intrigued.
Yeah.
I think
my mind's broken, so I'm down to.
Yeah. if push came to
Only
shove,
up from here.
Yeah. It's a fascinating subject study, though, because that obviously the individual users get to calibrate their dose, I believe, and then can sort of go in, and I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting. Hopefully, it'll go ahead one day.
Yeah, that is interesting to think about. See, I've been, obviously we love space and the stars and the universe and what's out there, and love talking about it. But lately I've been thinking nobody's ever, I don't even think in our lifetime we're going to get to Mars. If we do, cool. But I don't think that that's going to happen. And I don't think that even traversing the stars is the next step. I think that there's this internal thing, whether it's via DMT and psychedelics or it's meditation or,
which may be one of the same.
It's even like a very Buddhist and Hindu type of philosophy to it too. So even practicing those, you get a sense of it. But just this, this look inside, or this, instead of going outwards, let's go inwards. And that's kind of what I've been looking at lately, because we could travel the stars forever and not find a single thing, just more particles and molecules and stars and galaxies and black holes. But if you look inward, I think that there's a lot of strangeness there, and I think there's a lot to be discovered within the human body. We don't even know what consciousness is. So
yeah, I think that's well said. Well said, Mike. Off-planet research is so very expensive, and psychedelics, DMT, a fraction of those astronomical costs involved in sending rockets out there. And I mean, I don't want to poo-poo the telescopes because the findings are wonderful, but I think you're right. I think maybe now is the time to say, well, let's undertake some occult research, because the occult aspect of what's within us, our own psycho-spiritual constitution, which can become so evident smoking a low to light dose of DMT outside, is phenomenal, even without entity interaction. So yeah, I think studying occult nature within and occult nature without, and I mean occult in the light sense, in terms of hidden. I know for some people it's still a very taboo word with nefarious connotations. Yeah. I'm not peddling that, and I'm not promoting that. It's occult light. It means hidden.
Yeah, I mean, people misuse terms all the time, even apocalypse and all like if you like lifting of the veil. Like there's all these things that people use and they think they know what it means, but they don't know the origin and they don't know the historical use of it. But I want to say though, actually, when I mentioned the going inward, we've only had RN on once, but the first, when he was on, he said something similar, and I thought to myself, yeah, that's interesting, but I still want to know what's out there, But slowly since then, I mean, it's been a year and a half since he's been on. And I wasn't really thinking about what he said, but maybe it was in my subconscious. But just from studying everything and researching and doing these episodes and having different people on, and it occurred to me that is right. That is something that we should be focusing on, not necessarily everything out there, but what's going on here first. And then maybe if we figure that out or get a better sense, then we can apply what we've learned to the external world.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's learn to walk before you can run.
Yeah, good point.
So with this new book, is there anything that you didn't get to that you're going to try and get to in a third book, or is there...
Well, it kind of like completes those 3 years of research. It completes my second and third year. As I say, I produced that before I was on social media. It's a lot of work. I'm thoroughly happy with the writing, with the research, with the book. I think it's a great book. I don't want to say I've been lazy marketing it. Somebody offered to help me with marketing, and that kind of fell through. And was I disappointed? Maybe a little bit. And since then, I've just kind of like been getting on with my life, so I'm pretty behind marketing it. So it's great to be on here. It's great that you guys are mentioning it, that I get to talk about it. But I really need to kind of market it a little bit, because I think it's a good book. And like I say, I've read other books, and it's kind of sort of taken me back to my roots. And I thought, yeah.
Oh, we'll blast it out there. I'll get the word out. Don't worry.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
The next couple days.
There's one thing we know what to do.
Yeah, is annoy the fuck out of people sometimes, but no. But we're gonna I market and promote all of our shows, because I think that's when we started doing this podcast, it was partly our own path of enlightenment. Let's learn a bunch of stuff. Let's try and grow. But it was also part, what's cool out there that's not getting the proper due or whatever. So, eventually the format, when we started having more guests, became, how can we help this person kind of achieve their dream or their goal? And slowly, I mean, having, obviously some people don't need it that we've had on the show, but I don't really think that you need it either. You do have a pretty big following, but I think that with this book, like you mentioned, somebody dropping the ball here or there or whatever happens, we're absolutely always going to put our guests out there and these conversations out there, because number one, I think they're interesting, and number two, it's not like we're just shooting the shit about something that doesn't matter. I mean, this is some of the questions that plague humanity since the beginning. So
Yeah, I mean, DMT is one of the most interesting research topics in the world right now, and I think that's going to remain good for untold years. I think it's just such a great mystery, such a great puzzle, and let's hopefully get the best minds on there.
What do you want to do? Will you be willing to do an extra 10 minutes here for our patrons? We can wrap it up here, but do
yeah, of course, Mike and Maurice, I'd be delighted to.
Those juicy tidbits in there.
So yeah, we'll get to the real the real story. No, I'm just joking. But we appreciate you coming on. We'll have you back on again, obviously.
Thank you.
DMT and My Occult Mind 2, the link's down below. And it's on hard copy, and you've got the Kindle, correct? Are you doing a whatchamacallit, an Audible for this?
Yeah, that's the intention. I mean, just behind here, I've got various acoustic panels. I've done some tests, and I've got a really good noise floor in here. So, yeah, that was the intention. In fact, DMT and My Occult Mind Lite, the revision, it's actually was an audiobook script, and I was like, but I've got a book here,
right?
Kind of like took the view that the original book was a little bit too wordy. So yeah, I'll be doing an Audible.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that, and you're going to read it yourself, obviously, which is good. I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. There's some of those Audible readers are actually pretty good, but then some of them, it's like, I can't listen to this. I'm sorry that I even got this.
Yeah, you're right. There's books that I've wanted to listen to, but I've just not felt on par with the reader, and I've kind of sent them back.
You've got a good voice
so you're not
for
hiring
it.
Mickey Rourke or what?
But no,
that
I'll
deep
give myself.
Voice in there.
Yeah, it's
no, you got a good
lot
voice,
better.
perfect voice.
Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that British accent mixed with, you're very concise and well spoken. So I think that, yeah,
good vocabulary.
Let us know when that pops. We'll check it out for sure. But
Thank you.
yeah, thanks again for coming on and sharing your personal experiences and stories. And again, everybody check out DMT and My Occult Mind Part 2. Links down below. Buy the book. Don't hesitate. Just get the book. Everybody's got plenty of time right now. Check out the book, especially if you like psychedelics. So,
thanks.
Cheers.
And we're about to turn this off and do a little segment with Dick on our Patreon at patreon.com/Mike and Maurice. For $2 a month, you'll get exclusive content. And check out our website, mikeandmauricemindescape.com. We are on all social media platforms. Oh, also follow Dick on Instagram. It's DMT Researcher, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then also on Twitter, it's DMT. Is it _ researcher or just DMT researcher?
_ researcher, I believe.
Okay. So check him out on there. He's somewhat active on Twitter as well, and always has something interesting to add. So thank you again, sir.
Thank you, guys. Much appreciated.
And
Appreciate it.
Again, check us out on our Patreon right now. Peace.